everybody, welcome back to my channel. I hope you guys are all doing great today. I am doing great today because I'm sitting in front of these beautiful lilies that I got a few days ago, and I want to show you how you can grow them successfully in pots. Now, over the last few years, I have grown to really love lilies. I just want all of them. All the lilies. I love lilies. So, but obviously, I also like growing some other plants, or I like growing a lot of others. So I need room for all the others to grow successfully as well. So you may be wondering, what do you do then if you don't have room? Well, obviously, the answer is to grow it in containers. So that's what I'm going to do, and I'm going to show you how to do it. But first, let me just take a second to talk about this variety. This is Summer Scarlet. Oh, look at that beautiful red. Ugh, I love red flowers. Sorry, that is just red flowers are my jam. I love them so much. See, this is hardy to zone 4, which is important because you need to have them at least 2 zones lower than your current hardiness zone. So you can look that up. I am in a zone 6B, so I need to have them at least to a zone 4, which is what this is, so that's good. They go 18 to 20 inches high and 12 to 15 inches wide. So that's perfect for this pot that is 15 inches wide. So yeah, that's just kind of the specs on this particular variety if you're interested. And now let's get into how to grow these in containers. So the first thing is, obviously, you want to select what pot you want. I like to use, what is this? Resin, yes. I like to use resin pots because resin pots are really weather resistant. So if you leave your pots outside in the winter like I do and it freezes, it's very important that you choose a material that will not crack if you plan on leaving them outside in the winter time. So things like terracotta and like clay pots and things like that, they aren't the best to leave outside. However, they do have their benefits as well, but because they actually kind of help to moderate the soil moisture to help prevent overwatering. So that's kind of the deal if you want to do those. But I personally would prefer and recommend resin pots. They're very nice, they're very weather resistant, they're very sturdy, and I think they're just good all around. So, but again, any pot material will really do. But the important consideration to always think about is drainage. It needs to have drainage holes. These are it actually came with like little, I don't know if I can find it. It's here somewhere. They came with poles that like you can kind of poke out. I actually put quite a few more actually, because I really want to make sure that these lilies right here have good drainage. That is very important. Whatever pot you use, make sure it has at least several good sized drainage holes because you need the water to go out. They want their water to come in, they want to soak it up, and then they want it to drain away. You do not want lilies to be sitting in water ever. They will not like that, and they will probably die. And again, we don't want that to happen. So make sure your pot has good drainage. Now, as for the size of pot, this depends largely on, I think actually a few things. First thing is, obviously, how many lilies are you planning to grow? This is 4 lilies right here. So 1, 2, 3, and 4. So these are 4 lilies, and this will fit very nicely in this 15-inch pot because it'll give them kind of room to breathe. That gives good air circulation around them. That's what they like. So, but if you're growing fewer, like maybe you're growing like 2 or 3 lilies, probably maybe a 12-inch, maybe even less, like a 10 to 12 inch will probably be fine. But An important consideration is to think about is that these, if you leave them in pots and they are hardy for you and they're happy, they will multiply over the years. In fact, I actually want to show you my other pot of lilies that I've had for just a year and show you what they can do in just 1 year. So this is a pot of lilies that I planted just last year. I planted 3, I'd say quart size or gallon size, I don't know. Those 3 potted lilies, they have like 3 bulbs each in them. So I guess it was technically 9 lilies to start with. Some had some babies, but you get the point. And look what they did. This was in a 21 inch, I think. It was at least 19. I think it was probably 21 inches wide. I can't remember exactly, but something like that. And as you can see, they have completely filled it all around this pot. So they definitely need, but that raises the, you need to know or keep that in mind when you are planting them in pots, that they need a big enough pot so that they can kind of spread out, because these lilies will multiply and give you more lilies, but again, they need room to grow. So yeah, definitely keep that in mind, your pot size when you're planting them. So that's kind of like the pot material and size and all that. Now let's get into planting. So we're back to these lilies, and planting it is actually very simple. It's not rocket science. It's fairly simple to plant these things in pots. You want to use just a regular standard potting mix. Do not use garden soil, either like bagged garden soil or soil from your garden. You never want to use it. The soil does not work the same way in pots as it does in the ground. So you want to make sure to use a standard potting mix. If you want, you can add some extra perlite to help increase the drainage, because like I said, lilies do not want to sit in water. So I'm just using this regular standard potting mix, and I'm going to fill it up to where it needs to go, and I will show you what it should look like in the end. So you can see I have the pot filled up, I'd say about 3/4 of the way, and now I'm going to show you how to put this guy in it. So it's not that complicated. You just take it out, but whenever you're planting it, make sure that it is, wherever the soil depth is, it is right at the depth it was in the pot. So you don't want to bury it too deep, but yeah, make sure that it is, that the top of the soil, like when you're planting this here, that the top of the pot is level with the soil line. Now you should, though, whenever you're filling your pot, you want to leave about 1 inch or so below, so that the soil doesn't wash over whenever you water it. So let's get into this, and I'll show you the finished product and some care tips on how to keep them happy and healthy. So here's what it looks like in its new home. Isn't it so pretty? I love it already. So it'll be look even better when they start blooming. So yeah, let's just make sure that you have a good inch lip or so. I don't know if you can see that. Yeah, just enough so that you can water it without the soil kind of bubbling over and making a mess. So yeah, that was basically how you pot them. Now I want to talk briefly about how to care for these lilies to keep them looking gorgeous. So the first thing to remember is that, first of all, these guys like sunlight. These need at least 6 hours of sunlight every day. In fact, let me see the tag. See, the tag says they like full sun, and generally lilies do prefer full sun. So you definitely want to get them in a nice sunny area where they can just bask in the sun all day. So that's light. As for watering, they want to be evenly moist, so they want to be kept lightly moist. They don't want to be too dry but certainly not too wet. If you're gonna choose one of the two, I'd say a little too dry is probably a little too better than a little too wet for these guys, because again, these guys grow from bulbs and they absolutely cannot be sitting in water. That will kill them a lot faster than if they dry out. But again, don't let them dry out either. You don't want them to get too dry, or else they might not flower well, and they might die if they get too dry as well. So make sure they're kept evenly moist. Check the soil. That's this thing in pots. Make sure you're checking the soil a little bit more often, because soil tends to dry out quicker in pots, especially when it gets really, really hot. You're definitely going to need to make sure that you are watering these more consistently. If it's still moist, maybe wait another day or two, but if it's dry about an inch down, like to your, say like if you stick your finger in like this and it comes out dry, it's probably time to water. But if it's still moist, you just hold off. Now, as for feeding these guys, I did not put any fertilizer in here because the potty mix already had nutrients in it. But I think maybe midsummer, after it's done blooming, you can feed them with something like bone meal. Bone meal in general is good for all plants that grow from bulbs and corms and stuff like that, because it just, I don't know, it's just, it kind of is what it is. So you can feed them with bone meal. They would probably really enjoy that. So that's feeding, and I would say probably once or twice a year you should feed them with bulb tone or bone meal or whatever to keep them healthy and to make sure they're getting the nutrients they need. Now, as far as after these are done blooming, so once all these flowers are done blooming, you see it's not done blooming right now, what you want to do is you want to cut it right below this. So you want to cut all the spent blooms off, or at least I find that the easiest way. You can deadhead them individually, but I think it's probably easier to just kind of cut them like right there. You can cut the spent flowers off because we don't want them to form seeds, but make sure you are leaving the leaves. Make sure you leave the leaves so that the bulbs can gather energy for next year. If you don't really want to look at them, you can, and this is another great thing about growing them in pots, you can kind of move them to an out-of-the-way spot where you don't have to see them if you don't want to look at their leaves. The other thing you can do, and I think I might do this, is to underplant them with like annuals and things like that, or something that will like fill and trail over, something like that. I don't know, I'm thinking maybe like calibrachoas or something like that. What do you guys think? Let me know in the comments. I'd love to hear any tips or any, what's the word? Gosh. Input, sorry. Sorry, I couldn't think of the word for a second. So, yeah, you can do that, because, again, these leaves need to stay up, or they will probably not bloom next year. Now, this next one is a big one. Overwintering. What do you do with these guys in the winter? How do you make sure that they survive? Well, first and foremost, at the end of the season, you can cut the stalks off at the end of the season because they'll probably look pretty unsightly. Lilies don't look very nice at the end of the season whenever their leaves turn all brown and yucky. So you can cut the leaves off. Now, as for where you can put this pot, you have a few options. Option number one, you can put it in a cool garage that doesn't freeze, or at least it doesn't get really, really cold. They do need to stay chilly, but make sure they don't get really, really cold. The other option is to put it up against your house, which is what I'm going to do. I did that with those other lilies I showed earlier in the video. They overwintered just fine. So, but again, I probably wouldn't leave them out in the open for a few reasons. A, they're more exposed, and B, if you live in an area where it gets really, really wet in the winter, their bulbs could rot. So make sure you put them in a sort of a sheltered position for the winter. So A, you can protect them from the really harsh cold, and especially if you live in a more northern climate, or put them in a garage or somewhere like that. The other thing you can do, if you're willing to dig a hole this deep, is you can dig a hole and sink it in the ground and cover it with a piece of plywood or something like that. That will actually, one, it will keep any excess moisture out because they really don't need a lot of water during winter time. And it'll also help keep rodents out. If you have rodents issues, then that might help. So, and the last option is you could basically treat this as a temporary thing where after it's done blooming, you could actually plant it in the landscape if you have room. I personally am not going to do that, so I'm going to have to find a way to overwinter in its pot. But I was pretty successful last year with those other lilies, so I think I could probably do it. But I don't know. We'll see what Mother Nature brings this winter. So, I think that's about it. I know this video might be a little bit long, but I just love lilies so much. They are so fabulous. They give you so much color, and they're just wonderful. So, yeah, and it gives you the flexibility. Like if you want lilies on your patio, it's a great option to grow them in pots. They will look so gorgeous. So yeah, those are kind of my tips on how to grow lilies in pots and how to care for them and keep them thriving. If you enjoyed this video, please leave a like, comment, and subscribe. I would very much appreciate it. And I will see you guys in another video, all things garden related, very soon. Thanks for watching.